I love your videos. They're fun to watch, and the comments from both believers and skeptics make them even better. It's amazing how your hard work has created a space where people feel safe to share their strange and unexplained experiences. I'm always liking your videos, telling others about your channel, and keeping up with your content on your website. You've built something really special, and I think everyone who follows you is grateful. I'm not sure if you'll share my story, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. A few summers ago, I had an experience in Missouri that I still can't explain. My partner and I decided to take a long overdue vacation to get away from everything. We rented a beautiful little cottage surrounded by acres of untouched land. It was like stepping into a painting. Rolling hills stretched on forever, dense woods filled the air with the smell of pine, and a sparkling river wove its way through the landscape. To top it off, the cottage even had a hot tub on a covered porch where we spent most evenings soaking and watching the stars. One afternoon, I decided to explore the property while my partner stayed back to relax. I started by following the edge of the woods, then ventured deeper into the forest. The wildlife was incredible. Deer, wild turkeys, and even a bear lumbered by at a safe distance. The further I walked, the more I felt like I was stepping into another world. Eventually, I came to the river. It was quiet here, with only the soft rush of water and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. As I walked along the riverbank, something caught my eye. A large animal standing in the water, drinking. At first, I thought it was a bison. It was massive, covered in dark fur, and stood so still it almost looked like a statue. But as I got closer, I noticed something odd. Its back wasn't smooth. It had jagged spikes running along it, almost like a dinosaur. And its head wasn't shaped like a bison's at all. It had a single, thick horn in the center of its forehead, like some kind of ancient creature. The closer I got, the more uneasy I felt. There was something unnatural about the way it moved, slow and deliberate, but with an air of menace. My instincts screamed at me to keep my distance. Suddenly, the beast lifted its head and turned to look at me. It had one giant, unblinking eye in the middle of its face. The eye was milky white, as if it couldn't see, but it felt like it was staring straight into my soul. Then it let out a scream, a horrible, bone-shaking sound that made the ground tremble beneath my feet. I ran. I didn't stop to look back, didn't try to figure out where I was going. The forest blurred around me as I sprinted through the trees, my heart pounding in my ears. At some point, I must have tripped or collapsed, because the next thing I knew, it was dark. When I woke up, I was completely disoriented. The woods were pitch black, and I had no phone, no flashlight, and no idea which way to go. I called out for my partner, but the forest swallowed my voice. For the first time in my life, I truly thought I might not make it out. Then I remembered the river. If I could find it, I could follow it back to the cottage. Stumbling through the trees, I finally heard the faint sound of running water. Relief flooded over me as I made my way to the riverbank. I followed it, step by step, until I smelled smoke. A campfire. My partner must have lit one to guide me back. The smell grew stronger, and soon I saw the glow of flames through the trees. The sight of the cottage nearly brought me to tears. I stumbled toward it, my legs barely holding me up, and collapsed near the fire. The next thing I remember, I was waking up in a hospital bed. My partner was sitting beside me, looking worried but relieved. They said I had been severely dehydrated and exhausted, but would be okay. When I told my partner about the creature, they didn't believe me. They said I must have been hallucinating from dehydration. But the image of that one-eyed beast was burned into my mind. Later, a nurse overheard me describing the creature and told me about an old Missouri legend, a being called the Myuu. According to the stories, It's a monstrous creature with a single eye, a horn, and spikes on its back. People who see it are said to suffer terrible fates, but somehow I escaped unharmed. Even now, I'm not sure what I saw that day. Was it a real animal that looked strange in my panic? Or was it truly the mini Washatu? All I know is that the beast's scream still haunts me. I don't care if people believe me or not. I know what I saw, and I hope I never see it or hear it ever again. Step into the abyss and welcome to Weird Encounters, a place where the ordinary fades into shadow and the unexplainable comes alive. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and join our ever-growing community of the curious. Your support is the lifeblood that keeps this channel alive. Now, prepare yourself, for what you're about to witness is not for the faint of heart. Let me tell you about something truly incredible that happened to me. It wasn't too long ago during a trip to a little place called Windfall Cove. It's a quiet coastal village surrounded by tall cliffs, thick forests, and a shoreline that's always wrapped in mist. I had just bought an old camper van and decided to take a break from everything by exploring the area. One evening, I parked my van at the edge of a forest that hugged the cliffs. The air smelled of salt and pine, and the sound of the waves crashing against the rocks below was calming. After setting up a small campfire, I leaned back in my chair, soaking in the peace and quiet. Then I heard something unusual. At first, it was faint, almost like the wind shifting through the trees. But as I listened more carefully, it became clear. It was a soft, rhythmic humming. It wasn't a bird or any animal sound I recognized. It almost sounded like a song, but not in a language I'd ever heard. I'm not the kind of person to let my curiosity go unanswered, so I grabbed my flashlight and decided to investigate. I walked into the forest, following the sound as it grew louder. The trees were tall and thick, their branches twisting overhead to form a canopy that blocked out the moonlight, but the humming pulled me forward, like a thread I couldn't resist following. After about 10 minutes of walking, I stumbled upon a small clearing. There, under the faint glow of the moon, was something that made me freeze in my tracks. Standing beside a shimmering pool of water was a creature I've never seen in my life. It was huge, with silvery fur that shimmered as it caught the moonlight. Its limbs were long and graceful, and its eyes glowed softly, like amber lanterns in the dark. In one hand, it held a staff carved with intricate patterns, and it moved with an elegance that didn't seem natural. I couldn't breathe, but I couldn't look away. At first, the creature didn't seem to notice me. It dipped its staff into the water, and as it did, the pool began to glow faintly. Ripples spread across the surface, and glowing symbols appeared in the water, swirling and shifting like living things. The light from the pool illuminated the clearing, and for a moment it felt like I was standing in a place untouched by time. Then the creature turned its head and looked straight at me. Its glowing eyes seemed to look right through me, not with malice or fear, but with a calm, knowing curiosity. For a moment, neither of us moved. It tilted its head slightly, as if studying me, and I felt like I was being measured, not in danger, but certainly being noticed. Then, the creature turned back to the pool, resuming its humming as though I weren't there. The ripples in the water grew stronger, and the symbols in the pool glowed brighter, dancing in patterns I couldn't make sense of. It was beautiful and mesmerizing, like watching constellations shift in the night sky. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the creature finished whatever it was doing. It straightened up, its tall form radiating an unearthly grace, and turned toward the trees. With one last look in my direction, it stepped into the shadows and disappeared, leaving me alone. The pool's glow faded, and the forest returned to its natural state. I stood there for a long time, trying to process what I had just seen. What was that creature? What was it doing at the pool? Why had it appeared here, of all places? The next morning, I decided to search the forest, hoping to find some evidence of what I had seen. I wandered for hours, retracing my steps and exploring beyond the clearing. I didn't find the creature again, but I did come across strange markings on the trees, patterns carved into the bark that resembled the symbols I had seen in the water. Later that day, back in the village, I asked some locals if they'd ever noticed anything unusual in the forest. Most laughed it off, saying the woods were full of old legends. But one elderly fisherman nodded knowingly and said, "You've seen the lumini, haven't you?" I asked him what he meant, and he told me about the lumini, a mythical guardian of the land. According to local stories, it appeared only to those who needed to see it or who had a connection to the forest's deeper magic. He wouldn't say much more, only that the lumini wasn't dangerous but was best left undisturbed. That explanation stayed with me, but I couldn't fully understand it. Whatever magic had been there that night seemed to be gone. My dear watchers, your presence is a gift. Thank you for your time, your curiosity, your courage. But remember, there are others who wander, unaware of the dangers that await. By liking this video and subscribing, you offer them a light in the darkness. Support our channel and keep the stories coming, simply by giving a thumbs up and subscribing and sharing. I've worked at Pine Hollow Park for years. It's a quiet place tucked away in the rolling hills of Virginia. Most days, I patrol the trails, help lost hikers, and make sure campers follow the rules. It's peaceful work, and I've grown to love the solitude of the woods. But one night changed everything for me. It was around midnight, and I was about to wrap up my shift. My plan was to head back to the ranger station and grab some rest before sunrise. Then, my radio crackled to life. A camper reported strange noises near their tent. Something unnatural, they said. I sighed, shaking my head. Over the years, I dealt with all kinds of late-night calls, raccoons rummaging through trash, owls hooting too loudly, and even campers scaring themselves with ghost stories. I figured this was just another one of those moments. Still, it was my duty to check it out. The woods felt strange that night. Normally, Pine Hollow buzzes with life after dark. Crickets chirping, frogs croaking. But that night, it was eerily silent. No wind, no insects, nothing. I parked my truck near the trailhead closest to the camper's site and grabbed my flashlight, and I followed the narrow path. My boots crunched softly on the gravel, the only sound breaking the stillness. When I reached the campsite, everything seemed normal at first. The camper was standing outside their tent, looking jumpy. They pointed toward the trees and whispered about seeing a shadow moving too fast to be an animal. I reassured them it was likely a deer or maybe a large bird and promised to take a quick look around. As I walked deeper into the woods, the silence grew heavier. My flashlight flickered for a moment, but it steadied again. Then I heard it, a faint rustling above me, followed by an odd low hum. I froze, tilting my flashlight upward. The beam caught a glimpse of something large moving through the treetops. It was quick, disappearing before I could get a good look. I whispered to myself, "It's just an owl. A big one, maybe." But deep down, I knew better. This was no owl. The hum grew louder, and suddenly I felt a cold breeze brush past me, carrying a strange metallic smell. I turned sharply, shining my flashlight in every direction. That's when I saw it, a figure standing just beyond the trees. It was taller than any person I'd ever seen, and its shape was unnatural. It had long, thin, claw-like hands. Its skin, if you could call it that, was dark and seemed to shimmer faintly under the light. But what struck me most were its eyes, two glowing orbs of red that stared straight at me. I couldn't move. My body felt paralyzed as those eyes bore into mine. The creature didn't make a sound. It just stood there, motionless, like it was studying me. Finally, my instincts kicked in. I stepped back slowly, keeping the flashlight trained on it. My breathing was shallow, and my hands shook, but I didn't dare turn my back. Then, without warning, the creature spread its wings, massive, leathery wings that unfolded with a soft whoosh. It let out a low, guttural sound that vibrated through my chest. That was enough for me. I turned and ran as fast as I could, tripping over roots and rocks in my panic. When I reached my truck, I didn't stop to catch my breath. I jumped in, slammed the door, and sped off, the forest blurring past me. Back at the ranger station, I tried to collect myself. I reported what I saw, but my voice trembled as I described the creature. My supervisor laughed it off, saying I was probably overtired or imagining things. Must have been a big bird, they said, but I know what I saw. That wasn't a bird, and it wasn't a figment of my imagination. For weeks after, I couldn't shake the image of those red eyes staring into mine. I avoided night patrols whenever I could, and when I did go out, I stayed close to the well-lit areas. Some of the older rangers started sharing stories with me after hearing about my encounter. They spoke of an ancient legend, something they called the Watcher of the Woods, a protector, they said, or maybe a warning to those who wandered too far. I thought leaving my small town meant leaving nature behind. I wanted a life far from the fields, the forests, and the endless hum of insects. The city felt like a fresh start, a place made of concrete and ambition. So I left the wild behind, or so I thought. Somehow, life had other plans. I ended up working for the city's animal control team. My days were spent dealing with all sorts of creatures: stray dogs, raccoons tipping over garbage cans, the occasional opossum that wandered into someone's kitchen. It wasn't glamorous, but it was familiar. Nature had followed me even here, in the heart of the city. But nothing could prepare me for the story I'm about to share. It's not about mischievous raccoons or the loyal strays looking for a home. No, this is about something stranger. This is about the cats. You might be thinking, what's so strange about cats? Cities are usually full of them, lounging on fences, darting through alleys, yowling into the night. But not here. In this city, there aren't any cats. At least not the kind you're used to. The ones I've seen are different. I first noticed something was off when I asked my coworkers why I never saw stray cats on the job. They just shrugged or changed the subject. Anytime I tried to file a report about a sighting, it mysteriously disappeared from the system. The police? They weren't interested either. It was as if no one wanted to admit these cats existed. But I've seen them. And now, they've seen me. It all started on a night when my partner called out sick. Normally, we work in pairs. It's safer that way. But I didn't think much of going solo. The night was quiet. My only assignment was to check out a report of a large animal rummaging through someone's trash. I figured it was a dog or maybe an overfed raccoon. I wasn't prepared for what I found. When I arrived, the neighborhood was eerily still. The trash cans stood in the driveway, their lids askew. As I approached, my flashlight caught a glint of something in the darkness. Eyes. Glowing eyes. But these weren't the eyes of a dog or a raccoon. They were wide and round, with thin vertical pupils. A growl rumbled from behind the cans. Slowly, a figure stepped into the light. Its sleek black fur shimmered unnaturally, as if it absorbed the moonlight instead of reflecting it. The creature was enormous, the size of a small panther, but it moved like a predator built for speed and stealth. Its tail flicked sharply, slicing through the air like a whip, and the shadows around it, they didn't just fall naturally. They seemed to cling to its body, swirling faintly like smoke. I froze, my hand hovering over the can of pepper spray on my belt. The creature's lips curled back, revealing teeth that glinted like daggers. It hissed. I didn't wait to see if it would pounce. Instinct took over, and I ran. Back in my car, I called the homeowners and told them to stay inside. Then I radioed my team. No one came. Instead, my supervisor told me to double-check what I'd seen. Reluctantly, I peered out the car window. The trash cans were still there, but the creature was gone. When I searched the area again, I found no trace of it. No paw prints, no scattered trash, nothing. It was as if the creature had vanished into thin air. My co-workers dismissed my report, but a week later, it wasn't someone else's trash cans being rattled. It was mine. Late at night, I heard the unmistakable clatter of metal. Peeking through my kitchen window, I saw shadows shifting unnaturally near the bins. For a moment, it was just darkness moving against darkness. Then, a flick of that whip-like tail, a pair of glowing eyes, and a smile. Yes, a smile, full of sharp, gleaming teeth. The cat had followed me home. I told my co-workers again. They laughed nervously, then told me to drop it. The police? They didn't even bother to come this time. But I know what I saw, and I've seen more since. These cats, these shadowy creatures are multiplying. I've spotted them slinking through alleys, hiding in the corners of parking lots, always watching. I can't explain why they've attached themselves to me. Maybe it's because I saw them and lived to tell the tale. Maybe they're curious. Or maybe they're waiting for something. I've tried everything to keep them away. Lights, repellents, even staying up all night. Nothing works. They're always there, lurking just beyond the edge of the light. Sometimes, I wonder if my partner knew. If their sudden absence that night wasn't a coincidence. Maybe they'd heard the stories, seen the signs, and decided to avoid the cats altogether. Maybe they knew what was out there. Now, the cats are my constant companions. In a dense, dark forest far away, there was a hidden cave that no one dared to enter. The locals called it the Whispering Cave. They said strange sounds echoed from it, and those who went inside never came out the same. One cold autumn evening, a traveler named Lena arrived in the village near the forest. She was curious about the stories she heard at the inn. The villagers warned her, "Do not go to the cave. It is haunted by a ghost that whispers secrets no one should hear." But Lena was brave. She loved adventures and solving mysteries. Early the next morning, she packed a lantern and some bread and set out into the forest. The trees grew thicker and darker as she walked, and soon everything was silent. No birds sang. Nothing. After hours of searching, she found the cave hidden behind a curtain of vines. Its entrance looked like a gaping mouth. As Lena stepped inside, her lantern flickered. The air grew icy cold, and her breath came out in white puffs. She moved deeper into the cave, the walls damp and glistening. Suddenly, she heard it. A soft whisper. "Why, are you here?" Lena froze. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. She held up her lantern and called out, "Who's there?" Silence. Then the whisper returned, louder this time. "You shouldn't have come. Leave. Before it's too late." Lena's heart raced, but she stayed. She whispered back, "I mean no harm. I just want to know your story." Slowly, a figure appeared. A pale woman with hollow eyes and long, flowing hair. She floated just above the ground, her tattered dress swaying as if caught in a breeze. I was lost, "Just like you," the ghost said. "Long ago, I wandered into this cave, seeking shelter from a storm. But the cave did not let me leave." "Why not?" Lena asked, her voice shaking. The ghost's face twisted in sadness. "I do not know. But now I am trapped, and I must warn others to stay away. If you stay too long, you will be trapped too." Lena's lantern dimmed, and she felt a strange pull, as if the cave itself wanted to hold her. She stumbled back toward the entrance, but the ghost followed her. "Hurry!" the ghost cried. "Go while you still can." Lena ran. Just as the light from the outside appeared, she felt the pull grow stronger. She pushed herself forward, falling onto the forest floor. When she looked back, the cave was dark and still, the ghost nowhere in sight. The villagers found Lena later that day, shaking and pale. She told them what had happened, but no one believed her. Still, she warned them to stay away from the cave. Years later, travelers would still hear whispers when they passed through the forest. Some said it was just the wind. But Lena knew the truth. The ghost of the Whispering Cave was still there, warning anyone who dared to enter. My dear watchers, your presence is a gift. Thank you for your time, your curiosity, your courage. But remember, there are others who wander, unaware of the dangers that await. By liking this video and subscribing, you offer them a light in the darkness. Support our channel and keep the stories coming, simply by giving a thumbs up and subscribing and sharing.